Hey guys, Parfax here, and the bow received a lot of changes on the PTR for the July update, and I wanted to go over them and let you know what I think of the bow coming up in the next patch. Alright, let's get started. Alright, so the bow received some pretty big changes on the PTR. We're going to go over them really quickly, and we're going to go over what I think the bow is going to be and where I think it's going to be next patch. So first, this is just the PTR. Things can change. You can see here we're reading the PTR, summer PTR release notes, and these things can change, but we're getting towards the end of the cycle here, and I don't think these are going to change very drastically. So we have a couple things here. We have added a cancel window to Rapid Shot. Now, when you shoot your arrows, you can cancel in between each one of them. This is a massive buff to Rapid Shot. Rapid Shot actually got probably the biggest buff out of any singular skill in the game, in my opinion, strictly because of that, and its perk got a really buffed. And you can argue maybe something like the Hatchet did get a few nice buffs, but Rapid Shot got a massive change and some massive buffs because of this, and its perk here, which you're not going to see here, has its penetrating Rapid Shot, now works on every arrow instead of just the 3, which is going to be massive for the new playstyle, in my opinion, for Rapid Shot. Next, let's talk about the new ability, which is Splinter Shot. Splinter Shot got removed, so it's not the new ability, but it's the one that got removed, into Explosive Arrow. We will show you the Explosive Arrow on the PTR here in a second, but let's talk about the two nerfs here in the first iteration. We have Poison Shot's direct hit passive. Damage went from 150 to 100. We'll tell you here why in a second. Why I think that was a very unnecessary change. And then we have removed a stagger from penetrating shot, which is the massive nerf that the bow received. Over the amount of damage, which I'm going to show you here in a second, that the bow received as a nerf, this is actually its biggest change. This was one of its best ways to actually interrupt anything. You couldn't, if someone was, trying to combo off your opponent or one of your teammates, this was one of the only ways you can actually help them with that, but they removed it. I understand why they did it, because it could become pretty oppressive, but I don't think they needed to tack nerf on a nerf on a nerf on a nerf. They did say in their dev blog that they wanted to change the bow because they thought bow was too oppressive in OPR, or at least too stat patty, and it wasn't very good in 3v3 arenas. I don't think they changed that a whole lot, but we'll tell you why it's not nearly as bad. So they did nerf two passives. They did nerf this by 5%, so you'll do 5% less damage after dodging. And they nerfed long range passive by 5%, so you'll do 5% less damage to foes at least 10 meters away. To me, I see this as a blanket 10 damage nerf, 10% damage nerf, which I think is pretty excessive. I think they could have nerfed one of these, especially considering that they nerfed it twice previously, but I understand they wanted to basically bring down its stat padding, and they wanted to kind of bring it in line with other weapons, which I think there's going to be one weapon, which we'll talk about very briefly in this, that is going to outshine pretty much everything next patch, but this is a interesting nerf. So the reason why I really don't like this Poison Shot passive change is because Poison Shot, I saw, is one of the few times you really had to decide what you wanted to do with it. Most people will, target right on the ground, and that was Explosive Arrow, but target right at the ground and put a Poison Cloud there so people can walk into it, and it's very much a stat patty type of ability. Now, if you took the passive, what you could do is hit somebody with it, but if you would miss it, and let's say you'd hit it the left, then that ability would go past everybody, not hit anybody, and you wasted that skill, where most people are just going to put it on the ground anyway. I thought that passive was really nice because it gave you the option to kind of hit somebody with it directly. Now, no one's going to take that passive. It's really not usable. It may have, before I liked it in 3v3, which is kind of the odd change to it. I don't think it was very good in OPR, as in the direct damage part of it. You really didn't need that extra damage on a single target, but in 3v3, you kind of want that extra pop. And being the fact that they wanted to buff it in 3v3 and nerf it in OPR, I think that was a very odd change. Next, let's talk about Explosive Arrow. So Explosive Arrow is, takes place of the new Splinter Shot, but it's a pretty cool ability. It has a 20.7 second cooldown. I probably have some refreshing on there, so it's probably got a 21 or a 22 second cooldown. But it fires an arrow that deals 50% weapon damage on hit, then explodes on impact, dealing an additional 135% damage to all targets within a 2.5 meter radius. Has an explosive arrow, direct damage, inflicts a burn, dealing 8% weapon damage every second for 10 seconds. And then we have contained detonation, explosive damage increased to 170, but damage explosion radius is when it goes down to 1.3 meters over 2.5 meter radius. So you can get some extra damage, but the explosion radius is a lot smaller. This is a very, very cool ability. Honestly, when they first implemented this ability, I didn't like it at all. It essentially had the exact same animation as Splinter Shot. It locked you in place, and it was very bad. But now they've made some very nice changes to it, so you can move and cast it on the run while having a pretty short cast time. Now, this ability also is a one-button click ability. Like, Parfax, what do you mean? Well, if I hit a Poison Shot, when I hit it, it loads it into my bow, and then I have to click again. Where Explosive Arrow, I'm just going to click it one time. I click it one time, and it shoots out, and it shoots out pretty fast. So this actually provides a little bit smoother play style. I actually hope eventually they come out with smart casting, so I can just hit, you know, F once to hit my poison shot, and I don't have to actually double click it, because sometimes those can get a little bit clunky if this, you know, you have a little bit of a latency issue. It can be very, I'm gonna say not horrible, but it feels a lot better when you just go click once, get the ability, and let it go. So very, very good. I like it a lot. The new ability is going to get a lot of play. Also, it has one of the best abilities in the game, or at least perks for the bow, at least. No, I shouldn't say in the game. It is definitely for the bow. There's a lot better ones, but Explosive Arrow hits grants empowered increased damage by 33% for 10 seconds or until your next attack. We'll get out of combat here. We will show you that little empower bonus. And it's only 33% on your bow. It's actually, I think, 21% when it's on your armor, which is still really good. So I actually hadn't tested it. Let's see if it's just the explosion and it'll give it to you. So it does. Even if the explosion hits, you'll get it. And then your next ability will deal a lot more damage. Typically, you're going to pair that with something like a pen shot. So it's going to be really good. So you're going to gain some of your damage back on, you know, maybe your pen shot, maybe your poison shot, if you use that. But it's going to be a really good ability. This ability is going to see a lot of play. And it's going to be a lot of fun to play with. So, boom, we get that. We get that nice little empower, and we can use it. Once you hit your next ability, you lose it. If your damage increased by 15%, that was because I dodged. But you can see the little empower bonus comes up there. It's going to be really good. I can possibly see you putting this on your weapon. You want to do like a really cheesy pen shot build, but nonetheless, honestly, I love the skill, and it's a lot of fun to play. So before we wrap this up and I give you my final thoughts on the bow, I want to tell you about a weapon that I think is going to see the most play and be the most oppressive next patch. You might have guessed it. Fire Staff. Fire Staff got some massive buffs, not necessarily in its passive tree, but the new change to the stat weapons, or it did get some changes. We got some changes with Meteor, which is going to be an okay ability. It definitely got a nice buff, but it's not going to be huge. But the passive changes or the perk changes to the abilities really benefited the Fire Staff. You can put Empowering Fireball on there. Trust me, this weapon's going to be crazy. We're going to have some Fire Staff builds coming up. Don't worry. But the Fire Staff, in my opinion, is going to take place of the bow in OPR for that absolutely crazy, crazy amount of damage that it does. So my final thoughts here on the bow is, honestly, it's in a better place than it was before. Now, Parfax, it lost damage, it lost pen shot, it lost this, it lost that. I understand. The bow definitely is less powerful than it was last patch. There's no way about it. It didn't receive as powerful of buffs when it comes to the perk pool as other weapons. Like, let's say, you know, the Fire Staff, the Great Axe. Well, the Great Axe is kind of very, you know, it's kind of meh. But the Life Staff received some really big changes, or the perk buckets are really good for it. The bow never really had a bunch of great perks on it. Rapid Shot did get a nice buff. Getting that on your weapon could be very good if you're in a very bruiser heavy meta. Putting the Rapid Shot perk on your bow is going to be very, very good. And I can see that being probably the best way to make your bow. But honestly, the bow received a ton of great changes. Because we have the Rapid Shot being able to dodge. We now have old Splinter Shot now into Explosive Arrow, which gives the empowered bonus, which we can now use that, which is probably the best perk on the bow, but nobody used it because Splinter Shot was garbage. Poison Shot did see a big nerf when it comes to its direct damage. But if you didn't see the changes, they also made a change where you can have poisoning, burning, bleeding on your rings. Now give you up to, it says 30%, but on the PTR it's 29. I don't know if that's a graphical error or if this is supposed to be 30 and it's actually 29. But that's a nice, your poison durations last longer. You can do this as a great buff for PvE bow. And then we don't have it here, but Alacrity got buffed. And Alacrity is actually really good on the bow. If you really want to play that fun, kitey playstyle, I know everybody hates bows running away. The bow actually has some really good evasive passives here. We have, after you dodge, gain 10% haste for 2 seconds. Haste gives you increased movement speed, obviously. We have Archer Speed, and you have Go the Distance. You can get Alacrity on your amulet, which is going to increase the duration of these by 30% next patch, which is actually crazy. I actually have a really good amulet on live that has that on it, and it's going to be pretty crazy. If you want to do that really kitey playstyle, that's really going to allow you to do that. Honestly, the bow skills are in the best place of any weapon in the game, in my opinion. I don't think any of these are going to be super oppressive. I don't think any of these are super incredibly busted. You know, you have Evade Shot, which I don't particularly care for, but people love it. Rain of Arrows is just a god tier ability when it comes to wars. Everybody hates on Rain of Arrows a lot, but Rain of Arrows is one of the strongest abilities in the game if done properly. This ability absolutely shreds. You have Poison Shot, which is probably now one of the weaker abilities on the bow tree, which is kind of interesting to say because you always ran Poison Shot. Rapid Shot got a massive buff to its quality of life, and its perk got very much balanced, or very much buffed. Pen Shot received a massive nerf to its utility, but it still does absolutely crazy amounts of damage, so you're still going to want to run this. And the Explosive Arrow is just a fun ability. It gives you the direct damage, kind of similar to Poison Shot, but you can put a nice burn on them. You can do an explosion around them, which is going to do some nice AoE. It has a very, very good ability perk on it. It's going to be a great ability, and the bow just feels a lot smoother. All these abilities now kind of flow pretty well together, except for maybe Rain of Arrows. Rain of Arrows is still a tad clunky, but every ability here feels really good. I honestly would have liked to see Knee Shot passive get kind of a rework. I don't think this is very good, but other than that, most of the abilities here are actually really good. We did lose some damage. We did lose some utility, but the bow is in one of the best places for abilities itself. All the skills here are really good. Honestly, the few perks are still pretty garbage. Poison Shot, Pen Shot, they're all pretty bad. I think Evade Shot's pretty bad too. It's okay, but they're all pretty bad. Rapid Shot, Explosive Arrow, and Rain of Arrows are pretty good, but other than that, and Rain of Arrows is still pretty meh, but at least they got a nice little rework. It you have to have the slow passive down here for it to work, but it's actually a pretty decent ability for wars, or at least a decent perk for wars. But honestly, the bow's in a great place. It's not going to be super oppressive. It's not going to be super underpowered. It's in a very good state. We will have builds coming up in the future. If you want to see a fun, quirky build that I'm going to be playing, or at least trying out when live comes, let me know. I can either put that out before before everything goes live, or I can wait to make sure I test it out. To be fair, you can run basically the same stuff. There's going to be like a couple different things you're going to want to get for it. Gearing itself isn't that bad. But we're going to have builds coming up. We're going to show you kind of what I'm going to run, like an OPR build, what I would run in a 3v3 build. We're going to give you a couple different builds coming up for the bow here very shortly. And before we go, if you haven't watched my video about the new Bisgear, there's a new bow that is absolutely crazy coming out. Just go watch it. That new bow is absolutely crazy. I can't wait to get it. It is a great, great bow. It'll be almost your best bow no matter what you're doing. I can see a scenario where it's not your best bow, maybe like in duels, but other than that, that bow is absolutely crazy. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, like always, and I will see you next time. Peace.